welcome to The Winning Mentality with me, Charlie Bosco. Karen Darke MBE is a Paralympic champion, adventurer and speaker. She was a keen runner and climber and orienteer in her early life, but aged 21 she had a rock climbing accident and was paralysed from the chest down. Since then, she's hand cycled across Patagonia and the Himalayas, sea kayaked in Canada, skied across Greenland, climbed the 1,000 metre high Capitan in Yosemite, and won 2 Paralympic medals, one of them gold. It all adds up to a pretty extraordinary story. Karen, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I'm slightly overwhelmed. I almost don't know where to start with you because it seems like you've done so much in so many different areas of the sporting world.
I think I'm trying to live like 10 lives in one or something.
If we start at the beginning, where did your interest in sport come from and what form did it take?
I'm not entirely sure. One of my early memories of sport was being forced by school PE teachers to run a 1,500 metre around a track and actually thinking I was dying at the end of it. I remember lying gasping for air at the side of the track and feeling really sick. So I'm not quite sure how I became so hooked on sport. I think it probably stemmed from a combination of my parents who weren't hugely into sport. Well, my mum was a PE teacher, but she not when I was little, but she wasn't hugely into sport. My dad was a keen cyclist, but they used to take me and my brother hill walking often in the holidays. So camping and being in the hills was part of growing up. That's kind of what we spent all of our holidays doing. And then I think I was kind of more of not a very sporty, slightly more normal in inverted commas teenager. And then there was a poster at school advertising a kind of youth expedition. It was with Yorkshire Schools Exploring Society to a very remote part of China. It was when I was in the lower sixth form. I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, that sounds amazing. I'd love to do that. But then instantly dismissing it as possible because it cost £2,000 and I didn't have £2,000. My mum and dad weren't rich. And I just thought, I can't do that. And then ended up with some friends encouraged me to go on the selection weekend. I got selected. My mum and dad were super supportive and helped me think of ways that I could raise money and get part-time jobs and do all sorts of things. So, and for that I had to get fit. I was going to be riding a mountain bike through a remote part of China for a month. I was part of a small team doing that. So I think it all began there, really. I remember the first time I got on the bike riding around the field at the back of my mum and dad's house, and again, thinking I was going to die because it felt so hard because I didn't have that lung capacity or I wasn't fit. And then slowly it came and I got really hooked.
I was going to ask you actually, did you instantly like the feeling of your lungs burning and being tired?
No, I thought it was awful. No, I think when you're unfit and you begin, it's hard. Like I remember finding it tough, but I liked being outside, and I had a commitment to go on this trip, and I was with a group of other sort of 10 other teenagers in the cycling group, so we kind of owed it to each other to get as fit as we could. So yeah, it started to come, I guess, quite naturally in the end, but yeah, in the beginning it wasn't so easy.
And how did the trip to China go?
It was amazing. I think it was 60 kids in total. We were all like about 17, 16. And there were different groups. There was a climbing group, a mountain biking group, a trekking group, a base camp group. And yeah, it was one of those experiences that completely transformed your life and gave me a huge appreciation for travel, for adventure, for exercise in the outdoors, for teamwork, all those kind of things that I suppose have been vital pillars of the rest of my life, really.
And so that was where your career in the outdoors started?
Yeah, I think I would say that. Around that time when I was in the sixth form, there were a couple of teachers who were very influential. One who was a big climber, so I started climbing. There was a fell running club. I grew up in Yorkshire, so fell running is a big thing. So as a teenager in the sixth form, I was exposed to all of these sports, and that's when I got engaged in them, really. And then went on to university and joined all the kind of sporting clubs that I could there, like outdoor things like orienteering and climbing and so on. So yeah, that became my foundation.
Can you pinpoint what it was that attracted you to it at the start, particularly climbing?
I think I must be attracted to sort of the challenges and the problem solving that's involved. That's obviously a part of climbing. I love mountains. Like my heart's always been in the mountains. And this latest trip I've been on to Australia was interesting because it was riding over flat desert plains for weeks. So I thought this is interesting. I've never been anywhere like this before. But and I think just that camaraderie that you develop with people when you're together in the outdoors, sharing an experience that can be really intense. It's something really special to do that. You learn much more about yourself and the people you're with when you're sharing an experience like that than you do sat in a coffee shop having a chat. Yeah.
And I've got to ask about your first trip to the Alps. People that know you and might have read your website might know the story about the Matterhorn.
So, yeah, my first trip to the Alps was with two teachers, actually, from two sort of ex-teachers from my school. And my partner at the time, who was a big climber, he'd grown up with family taking up alpine mountains since he was about 7. And he wasn't with me all the time. He was doing much harder stuff. So I was with these two friends, and none of us were that experienced. We had photocopies from a book on crevasse rescue, and we just went up to a glacier and had volunteered to take turns and go down the crevasse. And eventually we found ourselves at the Matterhorn, and I was just absolutely mesmerised by the mountain and desperately wanted to climb it. It's not very difficult if you go up the standard Hornley route of the Matterhorn, but obviously some people build up to it the whole life to climb it. So maybe it was slightly disrespectful just to turn up and think, okay, I'm gonna climb you, and we did. I kind of using a postcard as a route to follow to get up there. We didn't have a proper guidebook, but there's so many people up there, you don't need one, to be honest. You just follow people. But it's probably one of the worst climbs of my life. The least enjoyable. It's just a people train and dangerous and not much fun. But yeah.
Did you have much of a risk tolerance then? Were you attracted to the risk?
I've never thought of myself as attracted to risk. People think I must be an adrenaline junkie as well, but I don't think I am either. I guess I must have some attraction to risk. I wouldn't do the things I do if I didn't, but I've never thought of myself that way. I don't want to die. I didn't want to end up paralysed. I didn't, I don't set about trying to put myself in dangerous positions, but I just have this adventurous streak, and by the nature of that, it does put me in some potentially risky positions, but I must get something out of that.
But if you look back on yourself, say, how old were you when you did the Matterhorn?
I was 20.
So if you look back at your 20-year-old self, can you picture where you saw your life going when you were 20?
Not easily. I think when I look back at my 20-year-old self, I think I was bold. I think I was brave. I think I didn't think about danger or about risk. I probably imagined that I would be a geologist and I'd work in the mountains of South America or somewhere. I don't know. I saw my life in mountains. I didn't know what exactly I'd be doing, but...
And then you had your accident sea cliff climbing.
Yeah, so when I was 21, I was climbing on sea cliffs just outside Aberdeen, where I'd moved to do a second degree. And yeah, I guess I was being too bold and too brave, and I should have not been climbing the climb I was climbing. Climbing it was fine, but I shouldn't have been the one to be leading the climb because it was just a bit too hard and steep. And I had all the early warning signs. I was struggling a lot, and it was a very, very polished kind of worn route. So there was a big overhang on it. I wasn't good at overhangs. I didn't have great arm strength. That's a little bit different now. So yeah, but I didn't know when to back off. And I think that's probably the kind of the boldness of youth, or the lack of experience, and a bit too egotistical, wanting to keep going and push on and manage to climb it. So.
And when you got your prognosis, and I appreciate this isn't a very easy thing to talk about, but I think your positivity is one of the most interesting things about you. And what's it like, that initial moment? Is there any ray of light, like the positivity you seem to exude now? How long did that take to come?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it's not like it's hard to describe. So basically I was in intensive care in hospital, and I think I gained consciousness after about 3 days. And possibly that day, I don't even know when it was, but the doctor or the consultant basically came and told me that it was unlikely I was going to walk again, given the extent of the damage to my spine and the fact that I didn't have any sensation or movement right then. it was kind of weird because the night before I had my accident, I was out with a friend on bikes, riding back from the pub actually, and he had a loose mudguard on his bike. And I told him a story about a family friend who'd become paralysed because their mudguard had got into their wheel, thrown them over the handlebars, broken their neck. And we had a whole conversation, and I said, I can't imagine anything worse than being paralysed. I'd rather be dead than paralysed. And then 12 hours later, there I was. Of course, when lying there in intensive care, when someone tells you, I think I was so full of, I must have had a lot of drugs in my system. I think they've been pumping me full of diamorphine and all sorts. So it's not like I was in a lucid, I think your body's in shock. There's all sorts going on, so that when that information is given to you, it's not quite as shocking as it might sound. It was kind of like I knew already on some level. It was just like someone telling you what they'd had for the breakfast. It was weird. So I think it's more of a slow realization about what that means as I got better and I was out of intensive care. And it hit me really hard when I moved to a spinal injuries unit in a hospital in Yorkshire. So I was flown down in a special air ambulance. I'd broken my neck as well, so that was all in a big brace and wasn't able to move anything there. And when I got there, the diamorphine stopped and the harsh reality of where I was at, hit me. And I saw other people in wheelchairs and other people in much better positions than myself and other people in much harder positions than myself who'd lost function of their arms or couldn't breathe on their own. So it's a real mixed bag to find yourself in a spinal injuries hospital. And back when I was injured, there were no private rooms. We were on big wards with sort of 12 people on a ward and so on, mixed wards. So surrounded by men and women who had varying severities of injuries. And that was when the reality that life in a wheelchair was facing me kind of hit home. And that's when I found it hard. I distinctly remember, and it's not meant to sound trite, but I distinctly remember a week when I really struggled, when I didn't want to wake up in the morning. Waking up was like the nightmare. Being asleep was like the dream. And I just wanted to hide under the sheets and not know about it. But I think being in that environment, there are people in far more challenging positions, and you can always in this world find someone in a more challenging position than your own. And whilst it's not about comparison, it does make you start to think about what you have. And 3 months after my accident, a very close friend died in a climbing accident, and his death also really hit it home to me. It was like, okay, well, I'm here. I've got my life, and I can move my arms, and I can breathe for myself, and there's a lot of things I can do. And I think that's what really made the difference for me and made me determined to make the most of the life that I had and turn things around.
I suppose all of us are guilty of saying things like you said the night before your accident. And at what stage do you realise that actually that's nonsense?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think for most of us, not everybody, but yeah, when I was faced with a choice between, I wasn't gonna take my own life. I didn't feel like that about it. I had amazing friends and family who were there supporting me through it, and I think those early months I realised that the important things in life are perhaps not what I had thought they were, and the value of family and friends and those human connections is so enormous that I didn't want to walk away from that or not have that. So it made me, I went through a process of really trying to think about what I still had and what I still could do, not what I couldn't do. And it wasn't an easy process. It took time, and there were years, those early years particularly, where it's hard. But even now, sort of 25 years later, you have your moments where you wish that you could. But at the same time, I've kind of sculpted a life that's very special and that I very appreciative of and love very much. So.
And when did you start thinking beyond acceptance and really start thinking about how you can get the most out of life? Was that quite a quick process, or did it take a while before you'd really accepted what had happened?
I think it's just such an integrated, gradual process, isn't it? So, I began, as soon as I was able to get in a wheelchair, it was a huge tank of a thing. I was having adventures of a completely different type and scale. So my adventure for an evening would, instead of going climbing to the local crag or running on the hills, it would be pushing down the hospital grounds, seeing if I could do a lap of the hospital without falling off the curbs and getting up the ramps. So I think whatever kind of your world is centrifuged to, no matter how small or large it is, there's been times when I've been stuck in a room for a few months because of an injury or something. you just create. I suppose I just find myself creating adventures wherever I am, whether that's a physical adventure or whether it's something creative or whatever it is. Maybe I'm fortunate, but my mind doesn't seem to stop. I'm a curious person. I'm intrigued by the world, and I want to, I suppose, make a difference in the world or find meaning in what I do. So wherever I am, whether it's stuck in a room or out on the other side of the world, having an enormous adventure, I guess that's something I'm always trying to do or thinking about.
And were the people in the spinal injury place who struggled more than you with it? Do most people react like you?
I don't know. I mean, my memory of the spinal injuries, is really positive. It sounds weird, but when I look back, maybe I'm looking back with rose-tinted glasses, but there were some good times in there. You're sharing something very intense with people that you don't know, that you'd probably never choose to spend time with. There was a guy who'd stolen a mountain bike and making his getaway, gone over the handlebars and broken his back. And there was a wine merchant who'd been hit by a vehicle. There was a guy who worked for the gas board who'd been run over down a hole. Just a random collection of people that I wouldn't normally meet or probably hang out with in life. But together in that kind of hardship, we had quite a lot of fun. It was like Saturday night was fish and chip night, and one of the nurses would go out and bring them all around. And it was, because people are in there for a long time, it was probably different then than it is now as well. There was a lot more flexibility. So there used to be one evening a week, the nurses got anyone who wanted to come in their wheelchairs, and we'd all trek up to the local pub and back. And they were just like, it wasn't just completely dull. So.
And when you were releasing there, and you've got your new reality, if you like, what did you decide to do?
Well, very quickly I realised that I wasn't into. My memory is that Wednesday afternoons were kind of sport in the hospital, and the things that were on offer were archery and shooting, and they just weren't my thing. I was like, no, this isn't going to do it for me. And luckily, one of the physios was super supportive, and she managed to arrange for us to go sailing on a Wednesday afternoon down at a local lake. So from very early on, I was getting out on some of the afternoons to go sailing, and I suppose I just began this journey of discovery, just finding out all the things that I could still do. And I realised that there's a whole world of sports out there and organisations that enable people with spinal cord injuries to have those experiences. So a friend of a friend came in and suggested we go on a ski holiday, and I had no idea how I was going to do that, but he offered to come with me, and part of an organisation called the Backup Trust, and so I learned to ski. So yeah, I just began setting these things to look forward to that still involved sport and adventure and getting out there, and I suppose I've continued in that vein ever since. I always have something on the horizon that I'm looking forward to.
And I know you've got into Paralympic sport more recently, but was your focus initially, sporting-wise, outdoor sports and adventure still?
Yeah, completely. I had no interest in the Paralympics. A, I never thought of myself as being at that level. B, there were no sports that really interested me. Wasn't interested in running around an athletics track or swimming up and down a swimming pool. But there's a kind of strange thing when you're paralysed in a wheelchair. Lots of people, and you like sport, lots of people would say to me, oh, if you ever thought about going to the Paralympics, if you can just join it like it's your village fun run or something. And in 2008, I was watching the Beijing Paralympics on television and realised that hand cycling was a now Paralympic sport. And I just suddenly got this idea. I knew the next Paralympics was in London. I love hand cycling. And I thought, hey, maybe. And that's where it all began. And now here we are 10 years later.
Well, what happened then? I mean, who did you approach? I mean, okay, where'd you start?
I didn't approach anyone. I just started cycling more. Then I found out there was British Cycling is the organisation, obviously, for cycling in Britain. So to get to an Olympics, you need to be with your national body. So I made inquiries with them about the opportunities in hand cycling. To be honest, they weren't interested in me. I was probably too old and too slow or something. I don't know. So I just did my own thing. I just started training. I had no idea what I was doing. I went training for longer, which just gets you good at going slow for longer. So when I entered a race in 2009, I was still next to last in it and thought, this is crazy. What am I doing? And then I was really fortunate. A friend of an old friend got in touch and said that they had a massage and sports coaching business, and they really wanted to meet me because they wanted to be able to work with people with disabilities, and they maybe learn from me. So they came to visit me, and I sort of shared my little idea that I was trying to possibly get to the London Paralympics, and John offered to coach me for a while to see how that went, and John's still my coach today, and it went well.
But you can't be a full-time Paralympian, can you? You're combining this with a job.
I am, but it varies. In terms of my main focus now is training. So I used to work full time. I had my own business, and it was basically pretty much full time. So about 10 months out of the London Paralympics, I decided I needed to wind that down so that I could focus more on training if I wanted to get to the level I needed to be at to compete. And then, yeah, since then I continue to do some work part time, and I always have work and projects going on, but it's not like I have a 9 to 5 job. It's all very flexible, so I can fit it around training.
What's the work you do?
Well, a whole mixture of stuff really, but I write. I recently been doing a bit of radio stuff. I speak to groups, from school groups to corporate groups to audiences, so quite a lot of speaking work, and try and follow that up with some sort of coaching and learning and development type of work, so that whatever I'm sharing then is transferred into the environment that people are working in.
And is the basis of that your Paralympic sport or your outdoor adventures?
It's a bit of a mix, actually. It's pretty much, yeah, what my life has been. I'm constantly learning in whatever I'm doing, and if I wasn't learning, I would be probably not wanting to do it anymore. And I quite like thinking about how what I've learned in different contexts might be useful for other people in their context. So, yeah.
And so just going back to the Paralympics, in 2000, you said 10 months out, you stopped working quite as much, started training full time. What was that last 10 months like, and what was London 2012 itself like?
Yeah, I mean, for London, I think every Paralympic cycle I've done has had a different motivation. So for London, it was just all this massive experiment. It was new. Could I get there? Was it even possible? I was on a huge learning curve. I was so naive. I didn't know anything about training, and it was just an incredible 4 years to get there, and continue to be incredible because I didn't necessarily expect to win a medal, let alone a silver. And certainly, being in your own country and having that atmosphere was beyond words, really. It was incredible. Yeah, so I hadn't really thought beyond that. It was all about London, and then suddenly the way funding works for sport in the UK is that if you have a medal from an Olympics or a World Championships, then you get funding. If you don't, then there's maybe some funding, but maybe not. So I didn't really have funding before London, but then suddenly because I'd won a medal, I found myself in a position to get a small salary to be able to ride my bike. And I felt I had some more work to do, and that maybe I wanted to go back and see if I could up the game and potentially win a gold medal. So the cycle to Rio became all about, can I get some of these gains, and can I actually pull it off and manage to win a gold medal, which worked. So then again, I thought I would stop after Rio. I thought that would be the end of the road for me. And it's been a really tough year or so since then, actually. I think I'd burnt out. I felt really exhausted after Rio, physically and mentally on every level. It's like my body just had gone into overdrive and didn't really know how to stop. And I found I was struggling with energy just for basic everyday stuff, really. So it's made me question a lot what I'd done to myself, whether I could carry on doing it, what was possible, and whether I wanted to continue. So, once you've achieved that thing that you set out to achieve, it's kind of like, well, where else is it to go with it? But I've never been doing it for medals. I do it because I love riding my bike. I love the lifestyle that it affords me, and I love to be outside, and I love to move my body. Like I once said to someone, as long as my ass is moving, I'm happy, and it's kind of true. So I've come to the conclusion that if I can still manage to perform, then I'm training again now. And what I'd like to do is get to the Tokyo Olympics and have fun in the process. Use all the experience that I've gained over the past 2 Paralympic cycles, and maybe do things a bit smarter and with more balance so that I'm not wearing myself out or wearing myself down to the point of burnout. And yeah, hopefully I can still perform with that. So we'll see.
Well, what are the key things that you've learned from 2 Olympic cycles? That's a lot of experience.
Oh, you got all day. You have to come to one of my talks. No, I mean, a couple of the things that I hold quite close now in my thoughts are the importance of, yeah, I mean, you don't achieve anything. Well, there was a poster made for the London Paralympics, and there's 4 words on it. It's courage, inspiration, sweat, and love. And those are 4 of my key ingredients. I think we need, if you're going to do something, it's not going to come easy. You need to be a bit willing and a bit brave to step out there and give something a go and have the courage to do it, even if it might mean failure. You just don't know. Then inspiration, we're all human. We run out of energy. We need that kind of fuel to keep ourselves going, a bit like putting petrol in your car. So I think I try and be as open as I can to. I think inspiration for me comes from the most surprising places and the most surprising people. Just can be some random stranger that I meet. And we need to sweat. We need to work hard at times, but not all the time. Get the balance right, not burn out, and just not squeeze too tightly, but also not let go because you need to have your eye on the ball, kind of thing. And then, yeah, the love bit: love yourself, love your team, love your friends. Just we're all different and we're all doing different things in life. So I think it's important to love and respect each other and ourselves included, because I think it's easy to be harder on ourselves than we'd ever be with anyone else, really. So anyway, I could go on, but those are four of my vital ingredients.
Listening to that, your motivation, it sounds like, is more what the process does to you than being able to say, I'm a gold medal winner.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's nice to have actually managed to do it and pull it off and have won the gold medal, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm any better person or any better for it. What I gained from it was the process of looking at how to do that, and that is what motivates me. If I can connect with the right motivation to engage with the process, then I'm there, sort of thing.
Because I hear what you're saying, that you're happy as long as you're moving, but that's not enough to get you to the stage of winning a gold medal. Like you need a higher level of motivation than that.
Yeah, you need to be able to get up and get out and train most days and be willing to do that and to put in the hard work. What I've noticed already, actually, just in the last few months, since I made the decision, I only really made a full commitment, I think, to try and train for Tokyo in the last month. And what I've really noticed is that when I have the hard training sessions, I don't think of them or approach them like I used to. So in the past, if I didn't make my target, I'd be really disappointed. If I wasn't feeling great, I'd be thinking, oh no, I'm never going to do it. Whereas now I'm just much more savvy. I've got more experience. I know that some days you pull it off, some days you don't. The hard sessions don't feel as hard as they used to, and I don't think it's because they aren't any harder. I think it's just because I'm used to knowing what it's like to work hard. I'm used to putting my body through the kind of pain zone, and I've learned to kind of like it in a way. So yeah, it's not how it used to be.
Are you slightly concerned that after Tokyo, assuming you get there and it goes reasonably well, that there'll be a bit of a void?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always that concern, and I actually I kind of preempted that with both Paralympics. After the London Paralympics, I had a brief dabble into triathlon, para-triathlon, and went out to the World Championships in New Zealand in 2012. And again, after Rio, I've just been to the Commonwealth Games, having not done any para-triathlon really since 2012 much. Went out there and managed to compete for Scotland in para-triathlon there. So I think when your life is focused on something like an Olympics, there's obviously a very real danger that afterwards you fall into a void, and people talk about post-Olympic depression.
Do you think that's a real thing?
I absolutely do. I didn't get it myself after London at all. After Rio, I'm not sure I don't think I would say I was depressed, but I was definitely burnt out. I was exhausted. So has taken me a long while to recover from. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of athletes talk about it, and obviously not just for athletes but for staff as well. There's such a focus for a big event like that afterwards it's like you're falling off the edge of a cliff, and all that focus is gone, and you either need to be. I think it's important to preempt that and be ready for it in whatever way that means, whether it's just embracing it and being, yay, I've got some time without such intensity, or whether you've got something to fill the void. I don't know.
Do you think adventuring might fill the void for you? Because you've done a huge amount of expedition style hand cycling.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of what I thought would fill the void after Rio. I developed this project called Quest 79, which involves riding on 7 continents in 9 significant rides that are connected to water in some way. And I thought that's where I would go. So I'm actually surprised that I am doing that, but I'm also still training. So we'll see. I'm not sure where it's ever going to stop, but we'll see.
79 is because you were the 79th Olympian to win a medal, right?
Yeah, there was a whole weird thing with number 79 for me in the summer of 2016. It's a long story, but there was all these. Number 79 came up before I got to Rio, and there were all these jokes about me in number 79, and then got to Rio and didn't know until afterwards that I'd actually won the 79th medal. And then I was like, that's weird. What is it with this number 79? And I didn't know anything about numerology, but I ended up researching a little bit, and it's kind of the perfect number for me. And then I realized that 2 years before Rio, I'd taken a journey on a handbike through Tibet, which basically is at 79 degrees east. And my Rio recovery ride that I planned was to go to Patagonia, which is at 79 degrees west. And a number of years ago, I skied across Greenland, which is 79 degrees north. And I've always wanted to go to Antarctica, which the main adventure base in Antarctica, I didn't even know this until last month, but it is actually at exactly 79 degrees south. It's quite weird.
That's actually quite spooky.
I know, it's really quite odd, but anyway.
You're going to have to tell me about skiing across Greenland. You mentioned skiing earlier. For people that haven't been skiing and seen disabled people skiing, what does it look like?
Kind of like a very tight-fitting bucket seat that you squeeze your bum into. Varying back heights depending how much muscle function you have in your core. My back has to go quite high because I'm paralysed from the chest down, so I need that support in the back to be able to have I basically have to control the ski with my shoulders and my head, not because I can't move my abdomen. I use muscles there to control it. So it's quite hard, and the seat is mounted on the downhill ski, that seat is mounted on a sort of suspension which goes onto one single ski, a regular ski that, you would use. So, and then you balance it with 2 small, what are called outriggers, but they're basically very short little skis on crutches, kind of, for your arms. So it's quite a task to control it. It took me a long time to learn. And cross-country skiing is similar, but the seat is mounted on 2 cross-country skis that are fixed a certain width apart, and then you propel yourself along with ski poles. It's super tough.
I was going to say, that sounds just completely exhausting.
Yeah, it's cross-country skiing is one of the hardest sports I've ever done. It's especially with my level of muscular control and muscular function in my body. It's just all down to arms and shoulders and brute force, really.
And you also climbed El Capitan in Yosemite. What was that like? Scary.
I'd never, I've not climbed since my accident, so it brought up huge amounts of fears. Obviously, did a little bit of training for it that involves some climbing, but yeah, I mean, I'd never, as a climber, climbed multi-pitch climbing before. I'd never spent days on a rock face. It was always just most was a day.
Because El Capitan's, it's 1,000 meters high. You need multiple days to climb it.
Yeah, like many people some people climb it in a day, but that's like people that have trained probably for years to speed climb it. Most people take anything from sort of 5 days to a week or something to climb it. So it was quite an experience sleeping up there and entering a whole new world of climbing that I'd never really experienced before.
So you can't go first and everything, and basically a rope is dropped for you, and you do pull-ups up the rope effectively.
Yeah, so someone else leads the climb and leaves the rope trailing, and then I would basically belay them whilst they're aid climbing, and then pull myself up the rope using a special Jumar device that kind of grips the rope. You can slide it up, and then when you pull down on it, it grips, so you can use a couple of those to sort of shimmy up the rope.
But it's basically, given that you're paralysed from the chest down, it's essentially just doing pull-ups.
Yeah, basically.
And how long were you on the wall?
Well, the first time we began, I think we were up there for 3 days, but then we were going really slowly. We were running out of water. We dropped our food by accident, so we had to come down. The second time we went back, it took us 5 days to climb it.
Can you describe what it's like pulling over the top? Did it feel like an ending? Did it feel because it was climbing, did it feel different to other adventures or achievements?
I just felt a huge relief. I think I'd been pretty petrified for most of the climb. The only time I maybe relaxed was sleeping at night, lying in the sleeping bag, looking up at the stars. And when you're hanging off a rock face like that, and you're part of a team keeping each other, you're on it the whole time. Like my brain felt frazzled. It's like you're having to think of every little detail and every single thing you do with the rope all the time. It felt like doing the most, a really complicated maths equation at school where you're trying to figure out all these little strands and make sure everything's okay. And brain was fried by the end of it, just collapsed over the edge, relieved to be at the top, and then thinking, oh no, now we have to get down.
And has it made you think about trying to do more of that, or?
No, it's not a sport I can easily do independently. It's not a sport I can easily do anywhere. When you're pulling up a rope, it's not the same as having the contact with the rock, and you need somewhere overhanging. So whilst it was very, very special to do that, and I probably would quite like to go back and climb El Cap again, it's not a sport I'd sort of take up, if you know what I mean.
So let's fast forward to post-Tokyo. What sport do you think you might be pursuing? If we were to have this conversation 3-4 years from now, what do you think we might find you doing?
You know what? As long as my body will allow me, I'm never going to stop riding my bike. I love it, so that's just the way it's going to go. The Paralympic movement is incredible. It's an incredible thing to be part of. I don't know if there's any other sports in it that I would be attracted to do. There's nothing that massively jumps out at me and appeals. Maybe I'll take up lawn bowls or maybe I'll take up curling or something, something more sedate. I was thinking about that recently. Out at the Commonwealth Games, some of the Scottish team was saying, I said, what about Winter Paralympics? There's only 3 sports in, I think, para sports in a Winter Paralympics that I know of: downhill skiing, cross country skiing, and curling. And I can't imagine going for the skiing options anymore. They're just probably too full on. And one of the quite a few of the staff there that knew me pointed out, well, you're probably not going to be a curler either. It's not happening enough for you. So who knows? We'll see.
And last question. I'm not sure I can ask this without it sounding ridiculous, but I chatted to a well-known climber who had a big accident in the mid-90s, and he was reflecting back on it, and he said, obviously it would be great to be as I used to be, but I wouldn't want to give up the lessons I've learned by this happening to me. You've been paralysed, I mean, as long as you were not paralysed.
Yeah.
When you reflect on your life and how it's worked out, how do you feel about the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a very similar answer. I wouldn't ever choose to be paralysed. It's quite handy being able to walk, and it's quite handy being able to use your body like it's designed to be, go to the toilet easily and all those kind of things. But at the same time, it's given me an incredible life, and I don't know what my life would have been like otherwise. I often quote that film Sliding Doors, where, she makes a different choice and her life pans out completely differently. I'll never know. I can't compare what my life would have been with what it is. But what I do know is that I, in many ways, am really fortunate. I have an incredible life. I get to engage in sport. I get to travel the world. I have some really special friends, and I've learned some amazing things. And I hope it's put me in a place where I can give some of those things back to the world in a positive way. And I don't know what I would have been doing otherwise. So yeah, can't complain.
So thank you to Karen for chatting, and best of luck to her on her journey towards Tokyo 2020. If you want to know more about her, go to karendarke.com. Speak to you next Sunday.